All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Natty News Daily podcast. Dan and I today are joined by Andy from Pro Prep Coaching, also the founder of the WNBF UK. I was actually just telling these guys I have not had my coffee this morning. I'm going to mess something up. It's already out of the way now, so let's dive right into it.
Should I be the intro guy for this?
Maybe.
Be careful what you wish for, though.
Yeah. So, Andy, we were talking off air real quick. You guys just had your first timers event. And you know what I think is the most remarkable thing? The last time that this group sat down and chatted was with the initiation of the WNBF UK. We were talking about how you guys were starting that, why you were starting it. And now here we are. And you guys have just held this event that was the largest event in the UK, probably the largest natural event on your entire half of the globe. So let's dive into how you made that happen, some of the back history in that, and maybe some of the struggles you guys had, just for the athletes that don't really see that.
Yeah, no, of course, we're happy to do that. First things first, guys. Like, thanks so much for getting us on here as well, and supporting the WNBF UK by having us on this podcast and allowing us to come on here and to chat about this. James, did you say it was like 7 a.m. your time over there?
7 a.m.
Yep. 7 a.m. Right? I mean, we can all have sympathy for you. I don't know if I could do a podcast at 7 a.m. Definitely not without coffee. So
we're gonna make it happen.
But yeah, the WNBF UK. Last time we were on here, it was like a total whirlwind. We were talking about like, okay, we've just taken this on. It's getting set up.
You seem more calm in head. You seem more calm on the surface, at least when we talked, than maybe all the internal stuff that was going on.
I don't know if that's just my general demeanor, or I was just confident that was going to go to plan. Maybe it was hubris. I don't know.
I think you were confident, yes.
Well, the thing is, I've been involved in bodybuilding since 2006. Yeah, so I've done a lot of shows myself. I think I've done about 30 shows. This year will be like my 8th or 9th pro show, or my 10th season. But I've been like helping out at shows since like 2008. I've seen every single aspect of that. And I mean, what's the expression? Don't pat yourself in the back too hard, you'll break your arm. But like, I've done a lot of stuff in my life. Like, I've done a PhD and I've taught classes and I've run events. So I was like, I can pull this off with my partner, Steph. She's a competent person. We run a business. We can make this work. We know how it's going to go down. And we have our own sort of flavor of natural bodybuilding. Like, I think everybody's got their own sort of ideas and stuff. And we just thought, let's get the team together of the people that have got similar values and ethos to us, and we can pull this off. So, I mean, it was a big ask. It was a big deal. I don't think people realize. Like, I think there were maybe thinking that there were schemes and things like that going on behind the scenes. But when the previous promoter was kicked out of the WNBF, because that's what really happened, they're left a void, and he sent out the email saying, like, guys, we're now doing this, you can come on board. And we were like, we don't want to do that, because we want to stay with the WNBF. And like, literally, we make the phone calls, organized it all, set up a website and stuff like that, literally in the space of like 3 or 4 days, like with no sleep or anything like that. So like, it maybe looked like there was some stuff going on behind the scenes, but we were just super passionate about setting it up. And we set the objectives. We're like, well, what do we want it to be about? We want it to be about the athletes for the athletes. We want to give them great stages. Want to give them a great experience so that they keep coming back and they feel valued. And that goes from the guy who's at the top or the girl who's at the top all the way down to the person who's maybe not placing as well, because bodybuilding's for everyone. So we wanted to give that to people as well. And we wanted to be stringent on the drug testing. So those were the key things we wanted to do. And man, there's so many moving parts. It's like spinning plates. There's so many things. And it was a stress. So like, at the time, it was far away. But I think me and Steph are more last minute people. So we're like, yeah, we'll get that done eventually, and we'll do this and do that. But we pulled it off, and it was amazing. I mean, it was the biggest show in the UK last year. So that was saying something, that we managed to make our first show the biggest event in the UK last year for natural bodybuilding. Got awesome feedback. We took a team to the Worlds, from there out to the World Natural Bodybuilding Championships. I think we had 20, 25 guys, and I mean, they killed it. They did so well. I was so proud of every one of them, how well they did, and they represented the UK, and we took home some medals. And then a year on, we just ran again the biggest event in the UK this year, 150 athletes. I think the next biggest one's got 100 athletes in it. So like the WNBF UK is here. And then we're gearing up for the Supernaturals. That's at the end of the year on the 9th of October. Super keen to get as many people into natural bodybuilding as possible who want to do that event to come on and challenge themselves for that WNBF Pro card and the opportunity to potentially go to LA. So we have to guard against complacency and everything like that. But there's a lot of things still to organize, but we can pull it off because we've got a great team of people around us. I've said a lot, guys. There's a summary.
Hey, you touched kind of on the
what's up?
The depth of the talent pool. Hey, Leroy.
What's going
on? We've talked off air about, just the depth and the number of athletes and the passion for bodybuilding within the UK. Relative to other areas, United States, Canada, all over, it seems to be like, insane over there, with how, how passionate and how many athletes are coming, out of the UK and doing really well. And, what do you think drives that? Kind of a tangent question.
I don't know. It's a funny thing, isn't it? It's a different culture around sports in America to the UK, and it's something I've often thought about. I mean, because you guys have got that really strong collegiate sports base. I mean, Dan, you're wearing like a collegiate top. It looks like already
Notre Dame football. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got all these sports, and you've put people through all of these programs and everything like that. And the big sports over there are what, like football, basketball,
American football. To clarify for the viewers.
Southern Association soccer. And I don't know if it's just that those sports pull more athletes in, and more athletes stay doing those sports than doing doing bodybuilding compared to the UK, or it's maybe like a difference in values, because I'm sure around the US you'll see this just like in the UK, but the north of the UK is probably more popular for bodybuilding and those sort of sports than the south. And I've spoke to sociologists about this, and they've sort of said, well, it's maybe to do with sort of like working class traditions. The guys like to lift weights and stuff like that, whereas in the south it's more middle class, and the guys like to go on bikes and they like to cycle and stuff like that. But whatever it is, the guys over in the UK, they take it super seriously. They want to do well, and I think the amateurs in the UK take it more seriously than the amateurs in the US. I think that's fair to say, and I think that's what produces those strong talents that come through. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Maybe the other thing is it's the draw of the IFBB side of things over in the US is so overwhelming.
I was gonna touch on that.
Yeah,
like speaking.
Maybe that's it.
Speaking.
What do you guys think?
For like Canada specifically, like the IFBB and then the Canadian amateur stream for the IFBB, like that's kind of the only route that's like big, I guess you could say. Like, I've told these guys before that when I went and competed within the WNBF in the States, people were like, why are you going to the States? Like there's like a show locally an hour away, but it's within the IFBB, the CPA and stuff like that, right? And that's just nothing against them. It's just not where my competitive desires were. But I think that can maybe deter people if they only assume that there's like an IFBB pro card at the end of it, and then with that comes like maybe the thoughts that you have to take steroids and you have to go enhance, and maybe that deters people. Whereas in the UK, I mean, the drug tested side of the sport over there even is massive, right? Between the amateur and the pro side, like there's a ton of very, very good athletes that are drug free that anybody would look at and go, holy shit, that's impressive.
I feel like there has to be a part of it that's the geography too, right? Like the US is just such a massive place where if you're not in one of these hot spots for bodybuilding, you might not even know about it, right? Think of how many gyms are in your local town. And I'll tell you, I didn't even hear about natural bodybuilding until I was in graduate school, because it was all sports and before then for me, kind of like what we're talking about. But I can tell you, 5 or 6 like good bodybuilding gyms in the US right off the top of my head. I can probably say the same thing for the UK just from watching social media. I mean, it's like there's a hub, and then there's multiple hubs. And if you're in one of those, I mean, it's just, that's the environment that you're in. So it kind of draws you in, whether you know it or not.
Yeah, James, I think you're
totally
onto
agree.
something. Andrew had alluded to kind of that blue collar mentality where
Yeah.
that's where kind of bodybuilders tend to be around. Like I live in a cushy little suburb and it's not really much of a bodybuilding culture, but like I've traveled to North Jersey for work, and the amount of legit gyms within like an hour radius is insane.
Yeah.
It's like a list of like 10 hardcore, fully decked out, legit culture gyms, and it's like, man, I have like maybe a couple around me and I train at home. So it's like, yeah, it's different. But yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's
when
that
I think
part
of when I think of like good gyms in Canada, there's Destiny, or what was it called? West Coast Iron. So that's in Vancouver. That's where a lot of the big guys will go when they do the Vancouver Pro. There's one in kind of near Toronto. There's one in Ottawa, so the capital. And like as far as actual like bodybuilding gyms, like that's like 3 in our entire country that I actually am aware of.
Yeah, so there's definitely like a hub thing for sure. The other thing that's worth mentioning is there's a totally different culture around drugs in the US compared to the UK, and you only have to watch the TV to see that there's long commercials, you guys call it, about prescription drugs and all this sort of stuff. So we're definitely much less inclined to perhaps just take something if we've got like a sore elbow or a sore head, or the doctor's less likely to prescribe something. And I think that just probably creates a culture whereby people are like, okay, so I want to get big muscles, well, I'll just go and do that. Whereas in the UK, it's like, well, we don't have that same culture around the drug usage, potentially. Plus, like, you guys have got Hollywood and stuff. Like, you've got the beautiful people, and people want that. There's definitely like that quick fix idea as well. So, I mean, I'm just throwing a whole bunch of stuff out there that maybe contributes some amount or not amount to that. But certainly the amateurs, I think, in the UK and Europe maybe take it that little bit more seriously. I think the stranglehold of the IFBB in the UK is not the same. Like, the NPC's been around forever. In the UK, in like the past 25 years, I think we've had 3 or 4 different organizations have ran that IFBB side of things in the UK alone, which there's not there's not that legacy in the same way, it's not an establishment in the same sort of way from there. So yes, it's a fascinating conversation, and certainly there's some great guys competing this year. The one that I think is probably the best is he was on your page the other day. There is Steve McDonald. He's great.
Steve is insane.
He's I've been training with him, and I've known him since he was 16. And he's like, he just lives in the local town up the road from me, and then he moved to the town that I lived in. And so I've seen him forever, man. And he's just put together, and he's got that crazy mentality that he just kind of wants it. And it's rare that you see a guy who's a lightweight or is like a short stature class can actually hang with a middleweight and heavyweight. Usually, like the good big guy beats the great little guy. That's often the thing or the cliche that we often see. But I think he's the one that I'd be looking out for. He's the real contender this year for the top awards in the UK.
He's messed around with strongman and stuff too, right? Like, he's
a
beast. Yeah, he's a beast.
Yes.
And he's only 27, if I remember correctly. He's young.
Yeah, it's something like that. He's got like, it's just a big love in on Steve McDonald's here. You'll like this. He's got records for powerlifting, strongman, and he's very good at bodybuilding. He's a really good boxer as well, by the way. Like, he's a multi-event. Just kind of got it. He's put together. Yeah. So great amateurs as well. I mean, the guy that won our first timers, like Leo Luez, amazing contender as well. And I think along with Steve McDonald, those 2 guys are probably the best lightweights in the country right now.
I love it.
So let's talk the structure of the shows, because we've mentioned it, we've talked about it, but for viewers that haven't before, right, we've mentioned first timers and then supernaturals. What's the differentiation? Who can go to what? Kind of what's the hierarchy there?
I'm glad you asked the question. That's good. So a first timers, anyone that's never done a show before, that was our first timers event. And actually, just as a little bit of an exclusive. We've got our first timers next year is taking place on July the 16th, guys. So anyone that's listening to this, if you're thinking about doing a show for the first time and you want to do bodybuilding, you have to do it sooner or later. And I know, Leroy, your coach, Dan as well, like you know what it's like. You don't know where you stand until you get on stage. So you kind of have to do it at some point. So that's next year on the 16th. And that's for anyone that's never done a show. So you can be a first timer in any division that we offer. So that goes from bodybuilding to men's physique to bikini to fit body and all the divisions that we offer. There's also a novice championships at that particular contest as well. And for anyone that is a novice, guys, do as many shows as you can when you're still a novice, because the place to get your feet wet is not in the Mr. classes. It's in the novice. You got to earn your spars there. So first timers, anyone that's never competed before, we'd love to have you. And then the Supernaturals, that's our national championship. That's the one whereby the best of the best are going to go there. We gave out a whole load of entries as well at our first timers to competitors who did really well at the first timers, and they'll do well at our national championships as well. And that's the big one. That's the one like, okay, you do well here, then you get the pro card and the opportunity to go and represent WNBF UK at the World Championships. And that's the WNBF, that's where we all want to sort of go and test our mettle against the best in the world. So that's the elite pathway from there.
Who won last year's bodybuilding, Andrew? I remember Josh won men's physique. Who won bodybuilding?
Leon Mitchell. So he's the poster boy. You might have seen him on the poster. He went to the Worlds and I think he was up against Bada? He might have been against Bada. That's a tough.
That's a tough
yeah.
Yeah. Here, do you know that guy's story?
I don't
know.
Don't
know too much now.
I'm going to tell you this because you'll like this while we're on this podcast. That guy is hardcore, right? Those guys from Nigeria, you think you're hardcore? He showed me like pictures of himself like lifting like scaffolding pole and concrete weights.
Oh, I've seen, I think on Facebook, because sometimes when I go on like to post on the Natty News page, I'll go to someone's Facebook account and I'll just start scrolling back because you can find some really like hidden gems in there. And I remember seeing stuff like that. He was like curling like cement stones, like it was nuts.
We'll have to get Bada on.
Right?
Yeah.
He told me he broke up with his girlfriend, right? And he slept in his car for 6 months and just kept training and eating. And then the church funded him to go out to the States to go and like compete in the worlds, right? Like you're not as hardcore as that, whoever you are. Like he's got a level of resilience that you're struggling to beat. Guy's crazy. He's such a nice man as well. Anyway,
I bet he didn't track his macros back then.
He did not track his macros. So that the Supernaturals, that's where the elite guys and girls are going to compete. That's where we're going to give out the pro cards for those events, and then take a team with us out to compete in the World Championships. I mean, incidentally, the European Championships, they're in Germany this year. They are the Valhalla Open, I believe it's called. That's on the 30th of October. So anyone that's a new pro or whatever, they're more than welcome. I'm going over there to go and compete in that show as well. And they'll be more than welcome to be invited to go over and compete in that German show as well at the same time. So there's more than one international event you can do. We're not all made of money. I think most people will probably prioritize that event over there in LA, but I'm super excited about that after we do our event in October. And it was such a good standard last year. So keen to see who we've got this year taking part.
I will say too, keep doing the massive cardboard pro cards.
Oh, you like them, yeah?
Everybody loves those things. It's awesome.
It's the little things, isn't it?
For sure. It makes, I don't know, it just feels special. Like the one show I did this past year, like it was like, oh, you'll get your card in the mail in like 6 weeks. And then like a show that I was following a couple weeks later, they did the massive pro cards. Or no, it was when the Vancouver show that it was like my backup plan if the States didn't go as planned. And out in Vancouver, Leo and them did the big pro cards. And I was like, that's sick.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, next year, I would love to do a pro show. I'd love to. And if we can do that, then I'm getting big, stupid checks on stage.
Oh, yeah.
Doing all of that.
One of them big ones.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you can cash it.
I don't care. I'd parade into the bank with that thing. Are you kidding me? They'd think I'm such a big deal.
Yeah. You can
I don't think
like,
your mobile banking app's not going to handle that one. You're going to have to back up quite a bit on that.
Yeah,
put a QR code on that.
Yeah.
I just
Set it
put
up
a
against the
little-
garage and then walk back. And
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned you'd like to do a pro show next year, right?
Yeah.
So is that kind of the goal? Multiple different shows, multiple different times, kind of expand on things, or do you like, we've talked about, Leroy, I mean, like a tiered system that Canada used to had versus like the US. There's no real qualifications for shows.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your ideal, I guess?
I guess the ideal is what you're describing there, which is, okay, you go from one show to two shows, from two shows to 3 or 4 shows with a tiered system like that. That's the ideal situation. But that takes time to put everything into place to sort of develop that from there. So in terms of the progression, I guess it's do one show, then two, try and get 2 shows bigger, pro show, and then go from there. But we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, really. We need to. And I was talking to Steph this morning about this, and we were saying like what we're going to talk about when we come on the podcast. We've done great so far. We really have, but like we can't get complacent, and it's not that easy to do all these shows. Like in terms of a tiered system, I mean, you probably need to have 4 shows to do that, to get a reasonable number of people that are going to come along as qualification for your finals from there. Yeah. And then like financially, it's got to make a lot of sense at the same time to be able to do the qualifiers, as you guys might come to know in time if you run your own shows. So that would be the dream. That would be the dream. But getting the people in place, the right crew and everything like that behind you that buy into natural bodybuilding, that ethos, and they want to be around other like-minded people, is it's important you get the right people there to do that, I think. And we're happy with our crew. So maybe in the future, but it's a lot of work.
It's a double-edged sword, right? So like the way it was here is that we had regional shows. So that was like the cities. Then you had provincials. So that would be like Ontario, British Columbia, Alberta. So top 3 would qualify for provincials, and top 3 from provincials will qualify for nationals. And at nationals, pro card was awarded. So the one thing that it did, which is something we've talked about extensively, is that it kept the caliber high at these national events, because you had 2 opportunities to, I don't know how else to say this, is weed out the weaker athletes, because the strong had to survive regionals, then they had to survive provincials, then they had to get to nationals, and then that guy finally gets his pro card. So in one vein, I think it does a lot of good for the sport, in that it helps make the big shows, you're going to see a very high quality athlete. Whereas, I was at nationals this year and there was some amazing talent up there, but the talent pool was very broad, because you only had to qualify from one regional show, which, depending on the show, we've all been to shows where maybe not a great athlete won, but because of who showed up and the numbers, that qualification, like, it's not like they can't this regional show. That could be a very different top 3, but they both have the same qualification. So I think more organizations need to do that, just to kind of preserve the quality of the sport. And I think the people that are truly passionate about it, like, I had zero issue paying my way through from like a passion standpoint, because I wanted to try to get to that level and prove myself. Whereas now, you see people just like, oh, I'm qualified for nationals. It's like, yeah, but you're going to get spanked. Like, but I think it kind of gives people less drive to do better, because, oh, I qualified for nationals. Like, you did, but that doesn't mean you're national quality, right?
Yeah, I hear you.
I think
it's a difficult one.
Yeah, I think it would do good for the sport, but on the flip side, I'm not dumb to the fact that I think it would potentially, like, people would maybe be like, oh, well, I don't want to take that extra step. I don't want to spend the extra money and blah, 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 blah. And then, maybe you see the numbers dwindle a little bit, which obviously doesn't help things either, right?
I think it makes sure that the people that are finally awarded a pro card, and maybe, in a hypothetical, that show hands out more than one pro card, right? Like, it's a super pro qualifier, like some of our shows are, where every class winner gets a pro card. Then you've got more pros. But I think at the very least, the tiered system makes sure that the people that are making it to that end stage are committed to your organization and the sport. Because I've now, in 3 of my shows, been beat by somebody who's never competed. They won their pro card and they have yet since to compete again. It was one of those like, oh, let me just do a show. Oh, look how easy this is. All right, I'm done. What's the new challenge? Right.
Yeah,
There
you
was
lose
no
people, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's that easy, right? And it's, going through a contest prep is not easy by any means. They were, well deserving in their physique, but if it's a one and done thing, it kind of takes away from the whole journey of it all, I'm sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in that respect as well. I mean, over the years, I've kind of softened to this. Like, I totally hear what you're saying, because other sports, what we're really talking about here is meritocracy, aren't we? Like, who's the best? Let's find out who's the best from that. And some people are in the sport to do that. You've got other people that are one-hit wonders that are only going to do it that one time, and that's okay for them as well. And that's what's great about having a first-timers novice event and stuff like that at the same time. I think one of the problems you guys have got over in the North America in general is the country's so vast, so vast. It throws up its own geographical problems in that traveling state to state to have some sort of tournament kind of structure that you guys are talking about, which has got obvious benefits in that. Whereas in the UK, or even if you just did it in Europe, its land mass is not as big, and guys in mainland Europe will go from Germany to Belgium to Spain to France, and no problem at all around that. They could go around that circuit and do something. So you've got geography going against you from there. I mean, the promoters, there's not as many of those athletes once you go past the first tier for them to then think, right, can I make money back on the event, because I need X amount of people in the event at the same time. So I sympathize from that point of view. I can tell you though what I think Italy and Spain do though, and you'll be interested in this. They do what's called a casting. Have you ever heard of this?
Mm-mm.
So it's kind of like old school prejudged bodybuilding. So with like the black curtain and stuff like that, and it's a case of like, okay, we're capping the numbers in this show, but 90 athletes, that's it, or 100 just for arbitrary. And they get 150 people sign up, and they say, okay, well, send us some photos of you standing in front of that black curtain. And then from there, like, okay, you either get in or you don't, because I either deem that you're of a caliber or you're not of a caliber, and I've only got 100 entries here coming at the show. So you are, again, for lack of a better expression, weeding out the non-elite people that you maybe don't want to get in your show. And that's, again, it's an idea that you could do. There's pros and cons to that, of course, from there. I mean, from the athlete's point of view that gets weeded out, maybe he goes, well, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe they don't want me, and then they take their monies elsewhere, and you upset them, or maybe they look at pragmatically and go, okay, this is something I want to do, like you guys are talking about, and the path I want to go on, I need to up my game and want to do well here as well. So I thought I'd throw that out there. But I totally see all different sides of the argument from here, because you want the best, and like as fans, we want to see the best.
Well, and that's something we've talked about behind the scenes, the three of us, we've talked about it with numerous people, is that like, how do we raise the standard of the sport? Like, how do we get these, when we look back at the shows of old, and I mean, the top 10 of every class were incredible athletes. Like, how do we get that back? Right? Is it some sort of like casting system where like, oh, okay, before you even step on stage, we got to see if you're like of minimum standard? Is it some kind of qualification tiered system where, okay, you got to at least get through one or two hoops to get to the higher level? I don't know. Like, if I'm an athlete and I genuinely want to pursue this, I want there to be better athletes on stage. Okay, what do you require of me to do? Oh man, you got to at least get through these 2 shows first before you even think about coming to this show. Okay, game on, right? And like, people can say the finances all they want, but if you genuinely care about it, like, you'll save the money. If I got to wait another year to save $1,000 to do these 2 shows, like, I'll do that because I want to test myself at that high level because I care, right? Any other sport, there's systems, right? Like, hockey here in Canada, right? You have freaking junior hockey, and you got middle hockey, and you got school hockey and collegiate hockey, and then pro. Like, you got to do it for 20 years before you even get to the level where you might make some money, right? And now people are getting upset because, man, they want to cast me, and then they're going to judge me in front of this curtain. Yeah, we got to see what you're all about, right? And It's just, I don't know. There's got to be a way to bring the caliber up, right? There's got to be a way to do it. It's just figuring out the logistics of it.
I think there's some obvious things you can do though. For example, like, see if you just have less divisions, that makes a massive difference. Like I had at my last show that we ran, the first timers event, I think we had something like 60 men's physique guys. Yeah. So we said, right, novice, short, medium, and tall, right? We could have split that probably into 7 classes or something like that if we wanted. But I was like, no.
Imagine being the extra medium class winner.
Well, like some people do.
Super
and
short.
There's an organization over here in the UK that goes like class A, B, C, D, E, and F, and G, right? And so they might have 15 athletes, but they're spread against 6 classes. So everybody's a winner.
That's how
And
bikini
that's
works.
definitely, for me, like a business model that they're going with, because it looks good for you to be a winner and you come back. But like what we did, we were like, well, no, let's just have short, medium, and tall. And it ended up something like 17 people in each class. And then because of that, like it's competitive. It's competitive. Like, and we made that decision, and guys are like, can we have a junior? Can we have a masters? I was like, well, the ethos of the class is on youth, physical appearance in the body. It doesn't really fit with the idea of what the class is all about. So how about let's just go with these divisions and not subdivide it anymore? And look, we could have had more bodybuilding divisions as well, but we're like, no, let's keep fewer classes here, and that raises the standard there. So I mean, I think that's an obvious thing you can do, and I see a lot of that at events. They're like, why have you got so many divisions? Like from a spectator's point of view, it's not exciting to see that many people. Let's stop allowing as many crossovers to take place as well, so we can keep the strength of it high at the same time. And I think those are things that I would suggest which are easy for organizers to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I've been at shows where you have to question, like, wait, what is this class? Because it's the same, we'll say same 5 people. Maybe there's one person that rotates in or out, right? Like debut, novice, open. Okay, well, they were all the same except maybe one of the guys didn't do the open. So why? What's the point there, right? So I absolutely agree with you on that one. And we've talked about, I mean, just other aspects as well. And I don't want to dive into it too deep, but I mean, like, how many world champions does the US have? There's a lot. Meaning like other federations, right? Like everybody has a world champion. Well, are you really world champion if you haven't competed against the world or people within your own country, right? Or is it just a geographic champion, really?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, if you could get everyone together to work under the one roof and the one hymn sheet and then pull it all together, then it kind of, you would get again more of that meritocracy that you're talking about. But the country's so vast, it does lend itself to pockets of things springing up here and there, doesn't it? Like that. So I don't have all the answers, but I think having less classes makes a difference. Subdividing it, more if you're doing a pro class, if you can actually give out money, like good money, you'll attract the better athletes.
100%.
You'll get the good ones will do it because they can't not do it, because they're like, no, there's prestige here and there's dough on the line, and this other guy's doing it. I want to be him because I've got an ego, and we all have egos. So like we want to do the best.
Yeah. I mean, we saw that last year. What was it? I forget the USBF show, but what was it, $5,000 to the winner, which was one of the biggest prizes in the US, I think. I mean, there were people like athletes actively advertising it, like, hey, like, I'm going to go for my shot at this. I've never competed with the USBF. Who's the USBF? And then like all of a sudden they're like, hey, we've got this big cash, like, come take it.
Yeah, Brandon Wattis did a good job with that, kind of like self-promoting. And obviously we were more than happy to give him a hand with promoting that too, right? But it builds that like a hype, right? It's like, man, this show is legit. If you got 4 or 5 guys that are, that's where social media can be very helpful, right? Is like 4 or 5 guys that are posting all this stuff, and you get invested in watching, like, oh shit, did you see like Buddy's shot today? He looks good. Oh damn, but
There we go.
All right, so this is going to be a bit of an interesting episode. We got cut off there because we haven't had enough of you guys support guys, not us. We're not cheap or anything like that. And actually, in that intermission, we were chatting about all sorts of different things. So we're kind of all over the bit right now. let's bring it back to kind of the hierarchy of natural bodybuilding, the scene of natural bodybuilding in the US versus the UK, and where we see the future of the sport going. Because obviously, you know, Andrew, you're a competitor, you're a promoter, owner of the WNBF UK. We like to think on our end that we're trying to do something for the sport. So, you know, as a collective, where do we see the sport? And I think this could be a good time, right? Andrew, I think you've spoken about Sam Okanola's post, right?
Oh
We're all
yeah.
aware of it a couple weeks ago, right? Is natural bodybuilding dying, or was he just trying to kind of stir the pot a little bit?
Nah, he was pushing buttons. He was definitely pushing buttons. That was a poke the wind post. I would come at and there and say that. I mean, guys like that, he's a role model, right? He's got a responsibility, and he should be talking up the sport, I would say. And like I called him out on that Steve Hall podcast. He should come over to the UK and compete. Like I want him to come over to the UK and see how vibrant and how great the scene actually is. And I'd love to see him go back on natural bodybuilding stages instead of really supporting the NPC. And we don't have to get into what they're all about, but like you want to see your best guys compete on natural bodybuilding stages and really talk it up and encourage other guys to come across and do that. And with his post, I mean, you know what, maybe it created an interest and maybe it did spur on some other guys to come across and do it. But I think it's more important to talk things up rather than to put them down and be positive about stuff. From there. Does that answer the question? Because I think what you guys are doing, just talking about natural bodybuilding, is a great thing, and promoting it and talking about all the different champions. And I think it's great that you are totally bipartisan like that as well.
Yeah, I think personally, when I first read the post, I was a little bit hurt, right? Because that's obviously like against what we're trying to do. But what I do think it did do was create some very good conversation points for the people that took the time to actually read the comments, right? Because you had a lot of very well-known bodybuilders jump in there, talk about where they thought the flaws were, and then also point out where maybe for others that didn't realize it, others that haven't competed as frequently or who haven't competed at all, like what you're seeing as the, you know, quote, death of natural bodybuilding might just be circumstantial evidence, right? We've just come off some very bad situations in the world. People don't have as much, you know, free capital right now to be spending on, you know, recreational sports, as well as some of the shows that were referenced were very early in the year. And we know that a lot of competitors compete later in the year, right? So I think it helped people understand the big picture of where we actually are and raise points to say, maybe this is how we could improve as a whole within the sport.
Yeah, I think that's a very nice summary. I just to come back on that, I think you really need the circumstantial evidence. I think you're right on that one. I think you really need to look at things over a few years for a trend to see, is it actually in decline from there? It's certainly not in decline in the UK. Like I said, we've launched we had the biggest show in the UK last year. We've already had the biggest show in the UK this year. And of all things going well, hopefully it goes from strength to strength to strength from there. And you guys can get your Zoom subscription sorted out in that with enough guys interested in doing it. It's not a dig. But like, you got to put your money where your mouth is, I suppose. Like for Sam, if he really cares about natural bodybuilding, and I'm not saying that he doesn't, because he's interested, he's brought up at the question point, like support it. But go out and run your own show. If you think you can do it better, then do it, or go and support something which you think could be better than it is, and help out and get involved, because being involved in your communities is how we make a sort of difference, really. And that's how you can as an individual. Because I know we all kind of feel powerless at times, but if you can help your neighbor or help make a difference in your own area for natural bodybuilding we're talking about here, really, then that is something that goes towards improving it. And that's, I guess, what he could be doing it. And he's got influence. He can be saying things like, guys, get yourself along to this show or that show, or I'm going to lead the way, and look how great you can look drug-free, and you guys can all do this as well. And that's why I'd say, like, he's gone and done that NPC show, but, well, I mean, what other natural shows are you doing this year? He might be doing others, but I hope he comes across and does the third one. I would say next year.
No, I love that point. And I think there's different topics within that point too, right? Like one of the big things that we see and I've heard it on many interviews by many top level natural bodybuilders, and especially natural bodybuilders with companies behind them now, whether they have their own company or they're sponsored by companies, say like, well, there's no money in natural bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Well, have influence over a company. The only reason there's no money in the sport is because nobody has seen value in the sport that has the financial means to make that happen yet, right? So make it happen. And that's something that we're trying to do, obviously, by spreading awareness, by creating relationships with companies and things like that. But I mean, if you are a top, retired or a current natural bodybuilder, and you have ties to a company with means to support the sport, do it, right? Leverage it, right? Because then you get the prize money, and then more people come in, more people come in. Now you've got more revenue to reinvest into the sport, and then the sponsors are making more money off of doing what they've already been doing.
Yeah, and then on that point, I'll give a shout out to my sponsors, CMP. We're super grateful for those guys for helping us run the shows and the financial support that they give to us. They've got a whole load of their athletes take part in the shows. They've got their banners all over the stage, and we advertise their products on our Instagram, on our social media from there. And if anyone is a sponsor and wants to get involved in it, I mean, and you've got the capital and the expense, and we'd love to have you as a sponsor. And that's the way, in which, as you're saying, that we can raise the profile and go from there. But I mean, this idea about money and bodybuilding, this is not a new concept. Like you can read books like Muscle Wars and go all the way back to the 60s and the 70s, where Joe Weider used to say, don't photograph the guys in their actual lifestyle, the fact that they work in my warehouse and they're not driving sports cars living in California. It was the guys that had a little bit more about them, like Arnold Schwarzeneggers or the Dave are a good example, and Paul Paris, that were businessmen that used bodybuilding as the vehicle to get themselves even more well known. And I guess that's how you can potentially make money off of it in a different sort of side of you. I mean, I get a lot of clients because they see me pose, they see my physique, they see my achievements and say, I want to look like that guy. Like he's got something that can teach me, and he's got the knowledge as well at the same time to push me along. So these are ways in which you can do it, and it definitely that inspires others as well at the same time, and it's good for natural bodybuilding. Does that answer a question, or is it just more a series of statements?
No, I think that last sentence actually is probably a great summary, right? Lead by example. If we want to make positive impact, you have to do it yourself. You can't rely on other people to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, we're the ones that are going to make the impact on the sport. People like yourself, Andrew, who are, directly promoting and, doing what you're doing with the WNBF UK and, trying to grow it and making efforts to do it and to legitimize the sport. You kind of touched on that about making it legitimate and appear legitimate, and it is legitimate. So, yeah, I think those are all great things. Keeps connecting and disconnecting on me.
I'll try and come back into that point.
All right, so we'll finish this up real quick then.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay. I was just saying, like, one of the things that we want to do, and it's, I don't know if we want to support it, but every time you cast a dollar, like I said, and it's a good point, it's all to do with sort of free market economics. You cast a vote. So if something's not any good, then we shouldn't be propping it up at the end of the day. So if it's an organization that's lax in the drug testing, then we shouldn't be turning a blind eye to it. If they're not supporting that, or the stage isn't looking the best, or they give out cheap trophies, or they treat us all like rubbish, then like we shouldn't be propping those things up. And like that's the classic, people vote with their feet and they go where they feel welcome, and they go where they get a good experience and they think it's legit. And that's one thing that we always try and do. And if more people maybe did that, then we maybe, and
it would grow
ethically, then we'd grow, because it's classic market economics. Like the market decides what's the best, or the government comes in and regulaets.
Don't speak those naughty words.
Forget you're American.
All right. We won't get lost in another rabbit hole here. Well, Andrew, I want to thank you on behalf of all of us. That I think that was a really good conversation. I know we could talk for forever about any different topic.
Yep.
But I think that's a really good summary of kind of where you guys have been, where you're going as an organization and where the whole sport kind of hopefully will be going in the future, with maybe some topics on how that can happen. So just very briefly, if people aren't aware, where can people follow you in your journey, whether it's with the WNBF or your own athletic journey?
Of course. So if you want to follow the WNBF, check us out. It's at WNBF_UK. I'm sure if you type in WNBF, you can find us. You can check out our website, www.WNBFUK.com. Also, check myself out, my own athletic journey. I'm fueled by Scott Oates on the gram, and I run Pro Prep Coaching. We had 30 athletes last year competing. Got another 30 athletes this year competing. I'm surprised I've even got any here with all the stuff that I do, but I'm not tearing it out. But yeah, you can follow us on there in the journey, and the athletes getting ready this year. So I've got a guy in a show just now, actually. I need to give him a call after this and see who's getting on. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank
It's
you,
been a
Andrew.
pleasure.
Good talking
Thank
with
you
you.
All right.
Cheers.
Yeah. So that wraps it up for the latest episode of the Natty News Daily podcast. If you like the content, give us a like, subscribe, follow, membership on the site, yada, yada, all the fun stuff, right? Have a good one, guys.